This week on the OneCast, we're joined by Elite Series angler Matty Wong. We're going to talk about his journey from the Aloha State to the mainland to fish the Bassmaster Elites, and I don't know what else we'll get into. So
that's a good one. That's a good one. Oh God, it's a toad, son. It's a toad, dude.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day.
What is going on, OneCast fans? My brain was moving faster than my mouth in that little teaser, so I apologize for stumbling there a little bit, but glad to be back. Glad to have Ben and Trey both in studio. We're all here again. No vacations to speak of for the foreseeable future, so hopefully we can maintain all three of us. As always, we're going to start with that plug for OneCast Fishing. Head over to onecastfishing.com. Use the code TheOneCast at checkout. Save 10%. Check out the snagless jigs, long neck hooks, and the weedless Neds. We have another partnership. We're not going to announce it till September 1st, right? But I think we're all pretty excited about it.
Yeah,
that's right. It's going to give you all an opportunity to get some sweet gear. There might be some teasers and some of our social media stuff if you're following us. Keep an eye out on that, and if you figure it out, you might have a little inside track. But we're going to announce that officially for our September 1st episode. We'll start teasing a little bit about that, though, here in the near future. Guys, anything you want to talk about or mention before we bring Matty on?
Got anything, Ben?
No, I don't.
If you're watching this, obviously, Matty Wong from the Aloha State, man. Ben and I are wearing some Hawaiian shirts because it's an honor to have him on. So we're really super excited to have that. You're going to want to stay tuned because you're going to learn about this angler's journey all along the way. And without further ado, let's bring him on.
All right, let's do it.
Hey,
Matty Wong.
Hey, we really need to get an applause button there.
Oh, we do. Well,
you know which one it is?
I'm gonna have to it's not like your typical iPhone where you got to scroll, like you actually have to do buttons. So I got to rewind back to the mid 90s to figure this out. But hey man, welcome to the OneCast, dude. We appreciate you jumping on with us.
For sure. Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely.
It's always fun to talk fishing and talk industry and talk life.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So speaking of fishing and industry, man, I know before we started the show, we talked about something that was pretty iconic that happened over the last couple of days. You wanna walk us through that?
Oh man, Mr. Kevin Van Dam, right? It's interesting because he's saying that he's retiring, right? And this is just all speculation. And this is just me. I'm just this is
go ahead and then go ahead. Let's hear what you say because I think we agree.
Okay, so this is all speculation. This has nothing this is based off of zero truths or whatever. This is all just my personal opinion. This goes without saying, Kevin Van Dam is one of the greatest bass fishermen to have ever graced this earth. 1, 2, I've been a massive KVD fan, and I'm sure a lot of us have for a very long time. Do I believe that he is fully retiring? No, I don't think so. I think that this is a way for him to make an outro from MLF. And then honestly, oh gosh, I might get in trouble for saying it.
I've been saying it.
I think he wants to come back to Bass, man.
Yep.
And I think I don't know I honestly I haven't talked to Bass about it. I don't I don't dig for this kind of stuff, but it makes too much sense for someone that of his age who's been doing it for so long, that's already committed to it, has so much stature, has so much just incredible experience in the sport, for him to fully want to hang it up. But if he does, and this is really what he wants to do, I also respect it too, because anyone who's done it at the level that KVD's done it, and now for myself speaking from experience, it is one of the hardest jobs that I've ever done. And when it comes to just, people are like, you fish for a living. And I'm like, I'm a professional truck driver that fishes on occasion,
I like that actually. That's good. Yeah.
And and the occasion just happens to be like 60 to 70 hours a week at times. And when you're standing all day and your hands are bleeding, you're sunburnt, you're dehydrated. I don't eat too much when I'm on the boat, so I've been trying to find ways to like trick myself. Either way, it's a very, very tiring, time consuming sport and career, and a tremendous amount of sacrifice that I think a lot of people, and I know myself, I didn't like personally, I really didn't know the amount of sacrifices that it would take to actually make it to the elites and actually fish on tour. Because when I was, in like 2016, 2017, where it was just a complete pipe dream, and I was like, man, that would actually be incredible, to drive around the country and fish all these incredible, like hyped up fisheries. And now doing it for the past 2 years, I can tell you it's definitely not what's projected out there in our head. Yeah, it's definitely not it, and it's funny because one of my and we'll go more into it, but either way, I had talked to some guys that had fished the elites, and there's a guy that I asked him, I was like, hey, so like if you were to requalify again, would you do it? And he told me straight, he's like, no, like no way in hell.
Yeah.
And this is before I had joined, so I was so confused because obviously this has been a dream of mine for a bit, and not forever. I'll share with you guys like my lifelong dream that I've had ever since I was 8 years old. But it was a dream long enough where I'm like, well, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, then whatever, because I'm still going to strive for my other goals and other dreams. Right. But and I was like, wait, why? And he's like, dude, it steals time from you that you can never get back.
Yep.
And that was such an impactful statement to me. And he wasn't the only person, to have said that. Now talking to a few people, Mr. Mark Menendez, who's an incredible angler, super decorated, and an incredibly nice guy. I was talking to him at the beginning of the year. We were both getting our boats wrapped up at the same place up in northern Alabama. And he had told me, I'm like, what would you say would be the hardest part? And he says, the time away from my family and my kids.
Yep.
And
that's it. Go ahead.
And that hit me hard, and unless you basically have the type of capital to like buy a fifth wheeler, and your wife is, on board of full-time being homeschooling your kids, and then you guys do it like that, you're gone a lot. And a lot of times you end up missing out on a lot of stuff and a lot of things. But on the flip side, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you talking about that, because we had Destin DeMarion on who fished the elites previously, is fishing the EQs now. And we really kind of delved into that. Like, do you have what it takes? Do you really understand what it takes to fish at that level? And that's what he went into. Like when his daughter was born, he was at a tournament, like his wife went into labor. He had to leave his truck and boat at somebody's house that he knew and jump on a plane, fly home for 3 days, meet his daughter, see her born, and then fly right back out to jump in his truck and drive to the next tournament. Like, people don't think about that. And until I got around fishing, and I think Trey and Ben can probably, like, we all felt like, man, if you just make it, like, you're set, you just fish. That's all you do. And it's not, it's a business. Like you have to do shows, you have to do stuff for your sponsors, all of that. And, we might get into some of that. We might not, we'll see where the conversation goes, but I appreciate you kind of leading with that. 'Cause anybody, all of our listeners out there, our viewers, all of that, they understand, like, one of the things we try to highlight is there's a way to get into the fishing industry and in the outdoor space without being a professional angler or
100%.
Chasing that dream. So just to see that little bit of insight and for you to have that knowledge going into, like, there's guys that have made it and are like, I don't think I'd go back. And I know guys that have fished at that level and have said the same thing. Like, I just want to fish a classic. If I requalify, I don't know if I would go back, honestly, because it is a grind. You're constantly fighting for sponsors and making sure that's funded. And short of the 1%. I always talk about it's like the 1% of the 1% that are actually making a living and have their wives and kids with them. Yeah. Like you said, with the campers and all that, you're away from your family that whole time, and it's tough. Just to, I guess, also tell you guys, I don't have a place right now. In general, like I don't get to go home to Hawaii until the end of the season. I was living in California before, and I got rid of my apartment there. And I literally packed everything that I can fit into my boat and my truck. And I didn't have a camper my first year, so I literally was packing stuff under the cover of my boat. And that's how I travel. And when people are like, dude, you're living the dream, I'm like, you get to sleep in your bed at night. You know?
I don't have a bed.
Yeah. So it's like I have a really comfy inflatable mattress, and it's been an incredible journey so far, and definitely a wild adventure. And it's so constant, the work that I have to do, that if I'm not documenting it literally just falls to the wayside of like, did that even happen? Like it feels like a dream that you wake up from that was so vivid, and you're like, whoa, you like remember like certain subtle things about it that are just so vivid and like so detailed, and then everything else is gone. That's crazy. Because you have So
I want to finish out the KVD thing. I know we started.
Oh yeah. Sorry, we like said
you're good. No, you're good, because we want to go down your journey from start till now. But you know, in your opinion, would you submit that every single one of the anglers on tour? I think so. Like, let me rewind here. A lot of kids or a lot of adults, even when they look at what you guys are doing, they think it's like it's the perfect setup. Like the grass is always greener on the other side. But each one of you guys, each one of us, we're all cut from a different fabric. And some people are extremely hardwired to instantly jump into that game. And then some, you're rewiring yourselves. And KVD was one of the people that I always looked at. Is like, he was designed at birth for something like this. You know what I'm saying? Like, he came out of the womb with a bait caster, and probably a spinning rod because he's from Kalamazoo, but he came out regardless, ready to catch some smallmouth. And it's interesting, man, like being from Kalamazoo, like that is the only name that you hear when it comes to fishing. It's the only name that you hear. Like my aunt taught the entire Van Dam family in school, and she knows them, and she doesn't even follow fishing, but she knows all of Kevin's, accolades and things like that. But it is interesting to kind of look at each angler, as we should, and take a holistic approach and be like, man, that person's cut from this cloth, they're cut from this. And so when it comes to wiring an angler, you get to see it firsthand, like who was born for it and who had to kind of, evolve into it.
So I'm going to make an assumption, Matty. Tournament angling in Hawaii probably wasn't a big thing, right? Like, heard the Hawaiian Classic? So did Kevin play a role like in your dream or in your view of like, hey, this is what tournament fishing is? Like, did you grow up? I guess, we've talked about Kevin. How did tournament fishing kind of get into your blood or into your space being in Hawaii and kind of separated from it? So, I mean, being a kid growing up in the 90s, right? You didn't have internet, really. Internet was like in its infant stage. We didn't have Tackle Warehouse. You had the Bass Pro Shop magazine catalog. That was like the size of the yellow book and like yellow pages. And you had to go and like find, C43 on page 575 and like write in your order to get like a pack of flukes. And for all you kids listening, like life is easy compared to like the way we had to order baits before. But you had to fill out the form, or you had to call the 800 number.
What's a jitterbug?
Well, so and I don't want to get off topic,
But yeah, it's interesting because in Hawaii we never they do it now. It's called Hawaii the Hawaii Freshwater Fishing Association, HFFA. They now do like local tournaments and stuff on Lake Wilson, which is my home lake, and that's on the island of Oahu in Wahiawa. And I was lucky enough to grow up with some of the founding members, and they, my Uncle Lance would take me fishing when I was, I don't know, like 6. Like I caught my first peacock bass with him. Like I remember he like flip into a bed with a jig and like jack one and give me the rod, and I'm like, and then I learned, like when I watch him throw the bait caster, I'm like, I want to learn how to throw, so I learned how to throw a bait caster at like 6 or 7, right after. But ever since then, I was 2 years old with a bamboo rod in my hand with my dad catching tilapia. I'm completely eaten up by angling. And to say that I'm someone who only loves bass fishing is a complete lie. I grew up free diving in the ocean. I know how to deep sea fish. I know how to vertical jig. I know how to fly fish. I don't know how to center pin or spade cast, but I'm not bad with a fly rod. And I just, all these different types of fishing fascinate me because of the journey, right? And so for me, when I moved to California, it was 2013. I was 24. I didn't have any, I was still living at home because I was going to college, and my dad had made a deal with me. And he's like, you can still live at home as long as you're going to school. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to see how long I can put this. And so it basically got to the point where, so at the time I was playing saxophone for a living and doing voiceovers and acting on local like TV shows and whatnot. And I had a friend that was in this touring band called Shiny Toy Guns, which was like this like electro pop like band that used to do Warped Tour and stuff like that.
Oh, so I've heard the band name before, yeah.
Yeah, so like her name was Cicely Treasure, and she's like, hey, why don't you move out to LA? And I'm like, nah, I'm good. Like, I got surf, I got warm water, I got good food, I got everything here. She's like, no, like, you should do it. Like, if this is what you're passionate in, you should try it. And so I said, okay. So in 2012, I saved up 10 grand. I was doing 4 different jobs. I was parking cars, I was teaching surfing, I was playing music, and I was doing like acting and voiceover stuff. And I hustled up, I bought a car, saved 10 grand, bought a one-way ticket, and I sent it to California. And so when I was in California, hustling through a bunch of different things, right, trying to figure out how I was going to make rent for the next, the next month, or just trying to like basically figure out life. I noticed that there was a couple ponds in and around Los Angeles, and this is actually, you guys are actually the first podcast that I'm disclosing this to, because this is really kind of like a unique, a very unique part of my story that I've realized that I've been missing out on a lot of just telling people about like how I basically got really back into bass fishing and whatnot, because I grew up doing it when I was a little kid. Like I learned how to Texas rig a fluke, and fishing on a bed. I learned how to throw a bait caster, all these things. But after going through and being like in the entertainment industry and whatnot, I had kind of fallen away from it. And I had still had like a spinning rod combo that I would go down to the beach and go throw like a Bassmaster to try and catch like surf perch or something. But I didn't have that drive. Like I didn't have that like hunger inside of me. That was like, bro, all I want to do every single day is fish, or like all I want to do is like, I'm just thinking about it. And I remember it was a friend of mine that was on set with me, and he's like, hey, I'm going to go to the LA River and I'm going to use this. I've been catching carp on a fly rod. And I'm like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah, like dumpster dolphins. And I'm like, no. So I'm like, all right. And he's like, dude, it's incredibly hard. Like if you can catch a carp on a fly rod, like you can catch anything, literally. And I was like, all right, why not? And so like I went for an entire week and I got skunked. And I throwing conventional gear and casting gear my whole life, I couldn't understand the concept of keeping a tempo with back casting a fly rod, like actually casting the line and whatnot. And I just spent so much time doing it, and I finally stuck one. And it was like 12 or 15 pounds on like a little 5-weight, like tiny little fly rod. The thing whooped my butt. And I was just like, bro, this is so sick. Like obsessed with it, like go down there all the time, whatever. At the time, I was dating this girl that was from San Jose, which was 5.5 hours north. She lived like about an hour from the California Delta. And we would go up and we would visit her family. I had never been in a Bass Pro Shop my whole life. I had never seen a Bass Pro Shop. And I'd ordered from the magazine, like the catalog, like you were talking about earlier. Catalog. Yeah, just the catalog. But I would just hear stories or like see like the ads on TV where like you walk in and there's like a giant tank or whatever and just rows and rows of tackle. And so I walk into this Bass Pro Shop because it was a bucket list, basically a fisherman's Disneyland. Go in there and I start talking to this guy there, and he's like, well, like what are you looking to get? And I'm like, I don't know, like it'd be cool to get like another combo. Like I think, you know, there's a couple ponds near my house, you know, I think it'd be fun, you know, because I've been getting into fly fishing, and I'm like, all right, but then the dumpster dolphins kind of got old a little bit, but I'm like, okay, I know there's ponds around LA, and I know there's a bunch of cool little like lakes and whatnot, and everyone knows the story of Dottie down south in San Diego. You know, it's like I'm living now in this mecca of bass fishing, so like why not take advantage of it? Like my Uncle Bob, who was my dad's best friend in college, was my bass guru my whole life. He was the first guy to send me a pack of flukes when I was like 10 and teach me how to Texas rig them and tell me how to fish them. And so around the same time, right? Well, let me finish up the Bass Pro story. He goes, all right, here's this rod, here's this like spinning combo, and you should get like 4-aught EWGs. And I'm like, okay, I know what that is. He's like, and get a pack of 5-inch Senkos. And I was like, what's a Senko? This is 2015.
2015.
Wow.
I was about to ask, was that 13 still? No, that's 2015. Wow.
2015, 2014, 2015. I didn't know what a Senko was. So I had stopped fishing for bass from the time that a Senko and a chatterbait had come out. So I had no clue what a chatterbait was, and I had no clue what a Senko was. And so he's like, bro, here, buy this and buy this. I'm like, okay. And I remember I went to the pond right behind the Bass Pro Shop, and I just like feathered through a weightless Senko and caught like a 2.5 pounder. I was like, bro, this is sick. I'm super hooked again. and so I would just go to the ponds, whatever. And then it just slowly became for me this therapy that in working in Hollywood and Los Angeles, doing the fast-paced life, traffic every day, celebrities, publicists, managers, craziness, the only quiet that I had was when I would go and fish. And even when growing up being a surfer, like I surfed my whole life, I used to surf competitions and whatnot, I would go out in the lineups in California and get frustrated. And I would just, if anything, it would just make me more anxious and pissed because the culture is different in California versus where I grew up in Hawaii. Like people drop in on you and don't think of anything of it. And for me, that's a huge thing of like disrespect. And so it was just really frustrating. So for me, fishing became this like this kind of like temple in a way of being able to like fully relax, fully kind of tap back into nature and be able to be outdoors and kind of like let the loud noise of the city dissipate. And I remember it was around the same time Todd Klein, who's a local hammer in Southern California. He's also surf commentator for a really long time, and also the team manager of Electric Sunglasses. He goes, he's like, yeah, I made like 45 grand last year just being a fishing, the ML. I think it was like the Toyota Series at a time or something like that. And I'm like, you made 45 G's like as a like fishing off the back of a boat. Like, wait, what the? And so that was the first time that it really clicked in my head that, oh, wow, you can actually make money doing this. And I, being a very competitive person, I played sports my whole life, played competitive paintball, played hockey, surfed. I've a bunch of different, played soccer. But like that was so interesting to me because I'm like, okay, wow, I can take my two passions of being a competitive jerk sometimes and then fishing and hopefully try to like, make money, and from there. So, and then this is where, if you guys know my story, and if you don't, my Uncle Bob that I had told you guys about briefly was my dad's best friend. In 2015, he was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And by the end of 2016, he had passed away. I was the last person to take him fishing. And that was really hard for my family because for me, he was closer than a lot of my blood uncles. And so my Uncle Bob was kind of like, he was like my family that I had in California, even though I didn't have any family in California. And around the same time, I was having a really tough time in Hollywood, like living in Los Angeles. I was living like basically in the ghetto at the time. There was like drive-bys every week. There was like, I was going from gig to gig, hopefully like trying to make a check. And I remember I was thinking about moving home and just guiding on Lake Wilson. And I asked his wife, I'm like, hey, what'd you end up doing with Uncle Bob's boat? And he had a 1990 364 old Ranger with a 150 Yamaha on it and a little black and white graph and a small little 6-inch Lowrance up at the front. And she goes, well, I just put it on consignment, but I know that Uncle would want you to have it. And I'm like, how much do you want for it? And she's like, I don't know, like $5,000. And I'm like, checks in the mail. Like without even like thinking twice of it, I'm like, holy crap, did I just buy a bass boat? Like something that was like such a tragic moment in my life, where, I'm always the person that always tries to see something positive, even out of the most like unfortunate situations. And so for me, that was like a gift from my uncle, that was like him saying, like, hey, go and do your thing with this boat and try and go and experience certain things with this boat. And so I spent the next 2 years up on the Delta. Basically, I was still living in Los Angeles. I didn't have a truck to even tow the thing. I was borrowing my ex-girlfriend's dad's truck, and because he was like, I don't even use the truck, bro. You can take it whenever you want and like go. And I'm like, all right, sweet. And so I would literally drive up. I would stay at her house, at her parents' house. I would take his truck and fish the Delta every day for 5 days straight. If I didn't have work for that week, and I would be there from sun up to sundown, learn how to flip grass, learn how to punch, learn how to frog, learn how to throw a Senko correctly, learn how to just do a whole bunch of like different techniques, right? And around that same time, I told myself that I wanted to start competing, but I didn't want to start donating. So I told myself, okay, your goal, if you can get like anywhere from 16 to 20 pounds every time you go out in the Delta, you'll be ready to start jumping in tournaments. And I got to this point where I was starting to get pretty consistent. And again, this is literally without side scope or side scan. This is before active target or a live scope. And this is just learning how to fish grass essentially. And,
how'd you go about learning all those, those different techniques that you probably weren't used to after getting the boat?
So around this time, there was a handful of guys doing like very, very consistent YouTube. And so it was Matt Allen and Tim Little.
Yep.
And then you had like a couple other guys that were up on the Delta, and it was very specific. It was very like, for me, it was like, my focus was, I want to learn the Delta because one, I understand tides because of being an ocean fisherman growing up in Hawaii. But two, I wanted to learn how to fish grass because we didn't have grass. And so taking stuff that I was learning online, also when I would see people out in the water, I would always wave, and then sometimes just get in conversations with people. And I remember this one guy that was like an amateur pro at the time, and I watched him with like 6 rods on his deck, and I was like, hey man, like this might sound weird. Do you mind just taking a couple photos of me like with these fish? I had like a couple 4-pounders. It wasn't even like anything special, but for me that was like I had a great day, you know. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, dude, no problem. Like he had a nice boat and everything, and I'm like in my busted ass Ranger, you know. And so I take a photo, and he's like, you fishing the stretch? And I'm like, yeah, I was, but like, I mean, do you mind if I just like kind of watch you fish it? You know, like, because again, I didn't know that really you can. I didn't want to jump into tournaments yet, but I wanted to see how someone would approach it who had tournament experience. And he's like, yeah, dude, no problem. Like, come, yeah, follow me. And we had a couple mutual friends, which was kind of cool. Like the more I talked to him, he's like, oh yeah, you know Alex from like Coyote Tech. I'm like, yeah, da-da-da-da. Like it was just like it reminded me of the surfing world where it was just really small and kind of connected. So that was really cool. And so he basically taught me how to flip hydrilla this day. Taught me how to follow it up when you're actually going up to a certain lane, like what to do into the lane before you go and you flip the grass. Like how to maximize your time and your efficiency when fishing around certain structures. And so that was a huge like piece. And that was one of many, many times that had happened to me up on the Delta and in general. And so in 2017, that girl and I broke up. And so this was about 2 years of having a boat up on the Delta. It was the end of 2017. I knew that one, now I got to buy a truck.
Yeah, you guys.
Yeah. And two, I gotta bring this boat down to Los Angeles. And because now I felt pretty confident fishing a shallow water tidal grass fishery, the next thing to learn was a highland reservoir that's crystal clear. So Castaic was about an hour away from where I lived. I found a place to park my boat, and that's exactly where it actually still lives. And I started dedicating my time to Castaic. And I about halfway through 2018, I did a simple Google search, like how to competitive bass fish, like such a new.
I like it. 2018.
That was before Chat GPT.
Yeah.
So, and I'm like, you know, and then so the first thing that pops up is like, you know, start at a club level. I think it was like Chris Saldane or something talking about how he had gotten started. And he actually worked at Coyote Bait and Tackle up in San Jose and like knew some of the homies. And so Chris was one of the guys that I looked up to for a while as well. Like being also like, cause Chris is half Filipino, even though he won't really like, you know, and so I'm being half Chinese, like being a Hapa guy, which means half in Hawaiian. It's like, oh, cool. All right. There's more of us inside in bass fishing or whatever. But, and so I basically, with this Google search, I found that, okay, the Ventura County Bass Club is a Bass Nation affiliated club, and that all I had to do was sign up, and then I can start fishing like local club derbs. I shot an email to the president at the time, Mark Torres, Chief, rest in peace, buddy. And he was the guy that was like, yeah, hey, come on in. Well, you know, we'll have you can fish as our guest at the next club tournament we're having at Castaic in a week. And so I was like, well, I have a boat. Like I'd love to, you know, fish from my boat. He's like, yeah, there's no problem. Do you mind if one of our club members jump on? Because the way that like California works is you have certain lakes that are completely locked up with quagga, and so you're only able to fish that one lake. So like half of the guys in Ventura have their boat locked into Casitas, because it's like a month-long quarantine process. It's like a big pain in the butt. So either way, this guy jumps on my boat as I'm fishing Castaic, and I ended up winning the tournament. And it was my first real like club derb and at the front of the boat. And these guys were like, "What the hell?" Like, they were all like,
when did you tell them that you spent every day out there for like 6 months?
I think that a couple of them had seen me out there.
Yeah. Okay.
And so they weren't like, because you see guys out there all the time, but you don't know, their skill level or whatever. And so for me, I was really, really getting into Neko rigging, which was kind of like just starting to come out in the States more. And then the finesse, real finesse drop shot, like 4 pound test finesse drop shot. And then a couple other techniques as well. But yeah, that was basically it. And then one of the guys in the club, his name's Jason Heminger, who almost won nationals, I think back in like 2003 or something like that. But he's like the old rusty guy there. That's just like, oh yeah, all you need is like margarita mutilator in like a 4-inch worm, and like that's all you need. Like everything else is stupid. Like everyone has those guys, right? In their
every club's got that guy.
If you come to North Carolina, it's a shaky head.
Shaky head. You got
all you need is a spot remover and trick worm. Anything else is stupid.
Yep.
That's right.
And so like, see, everyone has that like everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but this guy Jason, he was able to kind of like keep me, like get me up to speed with all these kind of they're all like in a way fallacies, right? So it's like, all you need is this, all you need is this. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, tell me all I need, and then from there I'm going to do something completely different.
Yeah,
but I'm also going to take that and try to learn it, try to figure out that bite. And most of the time it would work, but that would also open the door for me to like tweak it a little bit, to be able to manipulate that technique enough where I'm like, oh, this actually fits my style really well.
That hits me very strongly there, because I started bass fishing like, oh, what's this technique? I want to go try this technique, but from the outset to be like, I'm going to avoid that or tweak it in such a manner that no one else is using it. I mean that your mindset they're going into that, you think different when it comes to bass fishing.
Yeah, I mean it's easy to monkey see, monkey do, right?
Yeah,
because that's the input that we are, and as humans, that's how we learn, right? We see something and we try to replicate it. But a lot of times people don't imply their own imagination, and it's something that's so magical and so special. And every single person has it. It's just the ability to actually unlock it is the hardest part. Because when you have people, not to say that Jason's a horrible person, because he's awesome guy. I love Jason. But he's the guy that's like, no, that's stupid. I don't like color worms, dumb, stupid worm.
green pumpkin. What is that?
He literally talks like this. So anyone who knows him will be able to like laughing, because he's just like, all he does is slam like Coors Lights all day. Stupid.
Jason, the mountains are always blue, aren't they?
Always blue for Jason. But like this guy's like, he's a hammer though. He's a hammer. He wins a lot of the club derbs. He like almost all the club derbs. He wins a lot of the local tournaments up there. So he has reason for like his own things. But yeah, to be able to break free of that cage that people set on you is really important. So it's hard, but if you're able to silence the voices of negativity, you can actually unlock certain things that we have within ourselves to like blow the doors open and figure out a new technique or a way to rig something else that you're like, holy crap, I wouldn't even never thought about that. Like for me, like one of my buddies, like when the Yamamoto twin tail grub was out, right? Mm-hmm. He's like, take the ends, the very tips of the twin tail grub and just rub the very tips of them. And I'm like, what does that do? He's like, everything's embedded with salt. And I'm like, okay. So I do it. And I'm like, wow, it completely lightened up the color. Like it's like, it looked like you chartreuse dipped it, but it's not chartreuse dip. And I'm like, whoa. And he's like, yeah. And so this is before, like, obviously before Blockit like came out and started like, saying a bunch of stuff, or like releasing a bunch of like techniques or little tricks. Mm-hmm. Like for me, I was like, oh wow, I can manipulate the soft plastic in a way that will change the float rate or the sink rate, that will change the presentation. And so that was kind of like the first, like, I'm like, oh wow, like this is why it's bass fishing so addictive to many of us, is because like there's rules, but there's not. Bass can't read,
Right.
So when and so I don't know, it's kind of neat because you can freestyle in a way. Like for me, what I was telling you guys earlier, being a saxophonist, like that's my favorite way to play music, is to play by ear. Like I can read music, but I'm not the greatest at reading charts. But when someone's playing like a really fun backing track or like a song that I really get with, I'm like, I'm just going to just feel it and go with it. And bass fishing is the same way. Basically from there, back to the story. Sorry, giant tangents, guys.
No, you're good. Like everybody wants to hear you. They don't want to hear us.
Yeah, they hear us all the time.
Well, so this is when Jason goes, hey, you know that if you fish the Bass Nation, if you win the thing, you can fish the Classic. And I was like, dude, shut up. And he's like, no, triple swear. Like if you win the Bass Nation, you can't break a triple swear. You can break a double swear. So
I was gonna say, what's a triple swear?
Yeah, triple swear. So
okay, I got it.
So you can't break a triple swear. So if someone triple swears you, you're like, dang, he's like really telling the truth. So like he's like, yeah, you can fish. If you make it through, it's a long road, but if you can make it through the qualifiers for your state, you can, and then you make it to regionals, and then you basically need to win regionals for your state, and then you qualify for the nationals, and then you have to win nationals. Like you can't just like, then you can fish the elites and you can fish the Classic. And I was like, holy smokes! Like now,
that sounds easy.
Like now, for me, it was the first realistic pathway, because being from the West Coast, I don't care what anyone says. If you're trying to do the opens from the West Coast,
yep,
you're high.
Yep.
You're either someone who's incredibly blessed with unlimited supply of money, and you can basically just throw away $100,000 at least to chase the opens from the West Coast, because the closest derb that comes to the West Coast, which I think is the Southern, is like maybe some places in Texas.
Yeah, probably Texas.
It'd be Tech. Yeah, and they haven't gone to West Texas in years.
Yeah, so it's literally and I don't want to say impossible, but it's pretty it's pretty hard.
Yeah.
Probability is low.
The probability is extremely low, because the way the West Coast fishes, the way that California fishes, I will just say this, and anyone who fishes California will agree with me. It fishes completely different from the rest of the country. Yes, there's certain techniques that will cross over and that and whatnot. But I think the thing that I've learned, and which has given myself and a lot of different anglers that come east an advantage, is that we have to adapt to so many different types of conditions. Not only being able to fish highland reservoirs, being able to fish desert lakes and reservoirs, being able to fish shallow grass fisheries to tidal fisheries, from throwing 4-pound test finesse Necco rigs down in 50 feet of water to slinging a 12-inch glide bait. Like it's things that I've learned all on the West Coast. Now, to say that a lot of those things doesn't really translate to the rest of the country, because I would be like crushing it right now. And I've learned to actually simplify my fishing now, being on the elites for almost 2 years now, and a lot of things that that I would use in California, now I don't even use now on tour.
Why do you think that is? Maybe why it is so different, and there's such a variation in maybe techniques out there than I mean, maybe it's people want to use them, just as simple as that, or maybe the fish
are the fish just different?
It's funny because I had a conversation with one of the guys on tour, and he's like, bro, like some of the sneaky stuff that we do on the West Coast, it goes right over their heads the rest of the country. He's like, you don't need to throw a 5-pound test. And I was like, wait, what? So I'm not kidding. Like Castaic, if you try to drop shot with 8, you're not going to get bit.
Really?
And like 8-pound test is like, if you're fishing Castaic, you talk to any of the guys that fish Castaic on the regular, that's rope. Like there's no way like guys are fishing 8. Like Casitas, Castaic, and Pyramid, most guys drop shot with 6. And then a lot of the tournament guys drop shot with 5. And then some of us will drop shot with 4 when the bite gets tough. And you're not using anything more than 1/8 ounce weight. If you use a 1/4 ounce, it's not going to work. It's not happening. Like it is such a finesse technique. And then to learn out here that you can go and bomb a smallmouth in the head with a 3/4 ounce weight and put any type of flatworm thing in their face and they chomp it. It's like, it's frustrating. Because
it's frustrating because it's easy.
Because the fish are so stupid, right?
And it's funny you mentioned about the 3/4 because I get asked growing up north. I grew up, fishing for smallmouth, and I have guys down here ask me all the time, like, "Well, what do you use when you're small, like drop shot for smallmouth?" And I'm like, I don't know, 8-pound test, 3/4 ounce weight, and just chuck it out there. And they're like, 3/4 ounce. I'm like, a smallmouth doesn't care much weight, how fast that thing comes zipping by their face. Just get it to the bottom as quick as you can. Give her 2 twitches, and it's going to inhale it. And it's just the way that they are.
And it's crazy because Pete's used, and you too, Trey. You're used to fishing smallmouth up north, so you're using drop shots and stuff. I don't have a lot of smallmouth experience, but where I do is like the White River system, Bull Shoals, Table Rock area, and then you can go out there on a point and catch them on a crankbait and a 3/4 ounce jig, dragging on the bottom like you would. The bait's different in those 2 places. I think has a lot to do with that, but it is different how everything's. You just move around the country and the fish will just operate.
It's kind of crazy having you talk about Castaic and stuff because when I think of Castaic, I think about all those guys throwing giant glide baits because that's kind of what you hear, Castaic and clear, and so you think big line, like big bait. To hear like needing to go down to 4-pound test and really finesse them, it's not what I would think.
You have the complete opposites of the spectrum, right? So you have. Yes, you can go and throw a glide there, but the amount of people that want to go out and be Butch Brown and throw a 250 around with like an 20-pound test, he knows that lake like the back of his hand, and what he's able to do is so incredible that you can't really replicate it. Guys will go and throw a 250 and go catch a 15-pound striper, but to go out and actually catch even an 8-pound largemouth there right now is an absolute trophy. I mean, and that's a whole nother rabbit hole we can get into, but this striper, I feel like really ruined that place. Back in the day, there was 20-pounders caught out there. They would free line crayfish and like water dogs and catch 20-pound bass out of Castaic. You can look back in the record books. It was Castaic, Casitas, Lake Dixon, and a couple other places. I think but like and there's a few places that still have teeners, but I feel like that's more like NorCal now, and Central Coast and whatnot. But it's nuts to see now that I've had to thinking I'm like, oh, okay, let me try and do this finesse deal, like what are you doing throwing 8-pound tests in Florida? They don't care, in my head, it was just I remember it was the first tournament I broke one off in the trees because I was just I was skipping 8-pound tests because I was I just want to get the bite. And then after I get the bite, I'll worry about landing the fish. And I've learned that most of the country, dude, they'll eat 20.
Yep.
And they don't care. Most of the time, they don't care. As long as you make the right presentation. Now I'm drop shotting for smallmouth, 8 and 10-pound tests.
Yep.
Like I'll use Sunline FC leader, and it's incredible stuff. And that's just what I use now. Yes, once in a while I'll go down to 6, but then I'm like, whoo, all right, loosen up the drag,
Here we go, boys.
Like we're in for a ride, but most of the time you don't need to do that. And so it's been a really big learning experience and a giant learning curve. Because I mean, and you guys being in North Carolina, like you guys talking about the shaky head, I never threw a shaky head in California. That's something that a lot of guys don't do. Yeah, maybe some of the guys that fish like the spotted bass lakes, like the little sled heads, are like a deal. There's like really subtle things. One of the guys that was on tour from the West Coast, and I'm blanking on his name right now, and it'll pop up to me in a little bit, but he's like the master of shaky head fishing on the West Coast, and I never really did it. And so fishing brush piles is also another thing you don't really get to do, because you can't be on the lake at 10 o'clock at night sinking out cane piles like you can in fishing Hartwell,
Yeah.
And so I've learned the power of a shaky head and how incredibly important it is to be able to have confidence throwing something like that. And then also like something simple like a Texas rig, where it depends on the type of the part of the country that you're in. That could be a dying technique or something that you don't do as much, but it gets bit everywhere.
I know. So, such a stupid technique, but it works.
The stupidest technique in the world is a wacky rig. I don't care who wants to get mad and argue. That is the dumbest thing ever, but it works.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Ned rig too. That's another.
Well, the Ned rig's probably the most frustrating. But I mean, it gets bit. It just depends on what you can bring yourself to do. And
I love that Ned rig.
I know Ben loves the Ned.
See, I'll fish it in offshore. Here is 15, 20 foot. I'll fish them in brush piles offshore because we get the weedless one.
The weedless one. Yeah.
And I
it catches them, dude.
I took a guy out with me, a neighbor. He's mostly a bank fisherman. Well, he's got his boat, but he mostly fishes on the bank. He's not older gentleman, so he's not up to speed on the electronics. Let's put it that way. And I was like, yeah, we're gonna go offshore, probably drag some jigs and stuff around. So he brought his heavy stuff, and we weren't getting bit. And there was a I saw the brush pile on live scope and just flipped in there in a 6-pounder.
Yeah, on a turd.
On a little
on a turd.
A little TRD.
So
I mean, that's the thing. Like elephants eat peanuts, right? So go on.
Yeah. So you talked so you won your first tournament. That was 2018, Anka State.
Yep.
And then we got a little bit into, so we know you made it, obviously.
Yeah, I mean,
let's go through that year, through the nations, because that's not a lot of people have that story, and I think it's really cool.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Again, got off track.
No, you're good. That's why we free flow, man. We told you before we started recording, we free flow, so you're good.
I love it. All right. So going back, so this is actually, it's 2018, right? I win my first club tournament. I start fishing with these guys. I start learning from all these guys that have been doing it for 30, 40 years. I start learning from guys like Jason. I start learning from guys like Chief, and the list goes on and on. Still in taking a lot of stuff from YouTube and whatnot. And I started, Jason was like, hey, you can fish this Bass Nation deal, But what I think you should do is I think you should fish it as a first, learn the new lakes that you're going to go to, because they're going to go to the Delta, but then they're also going to go to Nasameno. They're going to go to New Melones. They're going to go to all these other lakes that I've never been to, Pine Flat, and you're going to learn how to fish for these certain things. I never fished for a spotted. I fished with my Uncle Bob for a spotted bass on Lake Berryessa when I was 12, and I don't remember anything doing it except for I was drop shotting in 60 feet of water. And so I was like, all right, well, I'll do that. Sure. This is coming off from fishing the Delta from the front of the boat for the past couple of years, and then fishing Castaic for half a year, really intensely, to now jumping on the back of these random guys' boats on a random draw, and I start getting my butt kicked. And I was like, what's going on? I know how to fish, but why can't I catch them behind these guys? and I realized I was trying to power fish from behind the boat. And so it was a very important lesson that I had to learn. And I'm glad I learned it very early in my career, was that the importance of slowing down, one, and the importance of finesse techniques, and also not doing the same thing that the last guy just did. And so that first year was 2019. I came in second to last, I think, in the standings out of like 30 guys that would fish the nation deal. And I remember the last event was on the Delta. I drew this old man, and we still like talk on Facebook and whatnot. He's like the nicest guy, but he was like, I think he's like 80, I think he was like 80, like 81, like old guy. Like we take off and his alarm starts going off, and I'm like, hey, you hear that? He's like, what? And I'm like, bro, I'm like, dude, your alarm's going off, but he's just like, I wasn't doing that yesterday. And I'm like, we should come off pad, like your alarm's going off. And he's just like, oh, it's fine. We're going to send it to Sycamore. And I'm like,
send it.
I'm like,
I love it.
Sycamore's 7 miles away, dude. Like, I don't think we should, like, we basically make it all the way to Sycamore Slough. And we were launching a BMW on the Delta, which is like a heck of a run. We get there. His boat goes into Guardian mode. And I'm troubleshooting with his son, who's a Mercury mechanic, on like, because this guy can't take the cowling off. So I'm like, I take the cowling off. I'm like taking apart his carb. I'm making sure that there's no like water in the field, all this stuff. I missed the entire bite window. Like I missed the whole tide change. I missed just everything. He's out there like just dragging around a Senko, just like manages to pick off a couple. And I think I weighed like one fish or something like that. I was like, you know what? This is the last time that I'm going to just, because I had to rent the hotel. I had to drive up, take time off from work, all this stuff. And I'm like, this was so frustrating. Like I could have done better in my own boat again, like in my head. Like I had the confidence that I was like, bro, I would not have made that decision and I would have done X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, oh, that's never happening again. So in 2020, I decided, screw it. I'm going to fish it from the front of my boat. I know I don't have an active target. I know I don't got 360. I know I don't got side scan, but I do have intuition. So let's just see what happens. 2019, I also spent the entire year in my off time when I wasn't fishing the Bass Nation stuff, fishing local ponds in Los Angeles, learning how to throw glide baits, and learning how to throw bigger boot tails and bigger swim baits and trying to get confidence in it and like understand how pressured fisheries and pressured fish still will react to a big size bait. I mean, you can see this is just some of my content here. Some of it, very, very scarce amount. But to get a bait that's, like 8 inches in front of a fish that's feeding up on trout, they're going to want to commit to something like this than something that's 4 or 3. Just because of it just means a lot less work for something that's going to fulfill them for so much longer. So that leads us to our very first qualifier. This is on Pine Flat in February, which is typically a spotted bass fishery and a couple giant largemouth in there. So during practice, I figure out that these guys are eating the swim bait. And I managed to get a couple like decent spots. Everyone else is drop shotting. There's one other guy throwing glides, and I found a drop shot bite out in 65 feet. I was literally 2D'ing them, and it was like a wacky rig. I was whacking a like a trick. Either way, it was like
worm.
Yeah, like a trick worm, but it was basically a super pintail worm. And I was like, as long as you whackied it and you just dead sticked it, like you would see the thing come in, drop it down to them, dead stick it, and then they would eat it after like 30 seconds to a minute. Like you had to you couldn't just drop down to them and eat it. You had to dead stick it and leave it there because they would just go down nosing on it and just look at it forever. And you just see that little line just like right there with your drop shot, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so frustrating. And so either way, first day of the tournament, we had incredible swim bait conditions. It was super, super windy. It was nasty, overcast. And I had found this place on Google Earth that I was like, I didn't practice it, but I had found this end part of this long stretch. There was 2 giants that lived on it that I pulled off with my glide. I was like, okay, I'm going to start short of this stretch and work my way up to it. And I had a super slow boat and a really late boat number. I'm like, well, if someone's there, someone's there. And if not, it's just whatever. I'll figure it out. Lo and behold, no one's there. I pull the trolling motor and I start working my way up, paralleling. I'm throwing a mag draft.
Mm-hmm.
Catch a 2-pounder. I'm like, sick. That's a solid one. Like we're talking about like 1.25 pound spots are good spots. So I catch a 2-pound spot and I'm like, sick. Okay, that's a good one. Literally in my next cast, I hook an 8-pound largemouth.
You hook or you caught?
I hook it, and I'm like cranking on it. The thing comes up and just wallows, and my co's like, oh my god! And so I get it to the boat. He nets it. He's like, bro, you just won the derb. And this is a 2-day event, mind you. But the average bag that was weighed in during this event was 7 pounds.
Oh wow!
Oh wow! Yeah.
So I had a 2-pounder, an 8. I ended up catching another 2, and my bag for day 1, I think, was 16 pounds.
Wow.
The local hammer up there, this guy named Timmy Wells, is like the Wells family, incredible anglers, good people. He's the guy to beat. And so day 1, I knew that he was going to have a good one because he just knows where they all live. And I was like, well, did you get him, Timmy? And he's like, yeah, like I got a 6. I was like, oh, sick, dude. Like, good job. You know, I was like, what do you got? He's like, probably like 14. And like, this is, and so it's like, it's without a doubt, like Timmy's like always leading it. Like he's the guy. Right. And he's like, oh, I'm like, nah, I got an 8. And he's like, what? He was like, so pissed. He like runs up in my boat. He's like, let me see this thing. Like opens my live well. Right. And I'm just like watching him. I'm like, dude, go. I don't care. You know, like reaches in. He's just like, bro, what the? And I was like, what's up, dude? and these are guys that really didn't give me time of day the previous year as a co. Because when you're fishing from behind the boat, people don't really like give you that respect, right? Because it's like, oh,
Yeah,
he's some kid, he's learning, da da da. But it was the first time that they had given me recognition. So I led day 1. It was like the first time that a lot of guys even came up and even introduced themselves to me. And day 2, I went out. I managed to catch a limit, but it wasn't as big as I wanted. I ended up losing. I came in second place to Timmy, and he ended up like catching a bigger one and whatnot. But either way, great points for qualifiers. So I'm like sitting in like second place for the AOY. Next one was going to be at Lake Nacimiento. Go out to Lake Nacimiento. I figure out they're eating bluegill. Everyone else thought that they were going to be eating shad. So everyone's on main lake stuff. I find that in the very back of a muddy creek, there's a ton of bluegill that's up. And if I had threw a chatterbait and stroked it, like if I threw it up on dry land, popped it in and stroked it like a jig, they would eat it. And they were all good, solid spotted bass. And so I ended up in practice, and this is kind of a fun part of the story. It was 20 minutes before we had to be off the water. I go to turn my motor over. I hear a poof. And I'm like, what the hell was that? Like, and so Nacimiento is about 3.5, 4 hours away from Los Angeles. So I drove up. I got a campsite. I was sleeping in the back of my 4Runner at the time, and now I just blew the starter off my motor. My buddy was luckily right next to me, and he's like, oh my gosh, dude, like we need to get you off the water before they like close the gate and you're stuck on the water. And he tows me back on pad with his skeeter.
Oh my goodness.
Bro, like literally we're going like 40 because we had like and so I'm driving my boat trimmed like, down. I'm like, bro, like this is so nuts, you know? And like I'm like, I was just surprised it didn't rip the D-ring out of the bow of my boat. But we get in, basically, I'm able to get the boat off. And the cool thing about the fishing industry and the fishing family, and this is what I always refer to as the fishing family, is that people always look out for each other.
Yes.
And for the most part, good people, the people that I like to like associate myself with, everyone looks out for each other. And it's like instantly, I had friends that like, I'm like, hey, dude, this is what happened. Okay, let me make a couple phone calls and me get back to you. I had like 5 guys looking out for me. As soon as I got off the water, I get a call and it's like, hey, Jared Littner's brother is a boat mechanic in San Luis Obispo. He's in 2 hours, or it was like an hour and a half away. If you can be there at 8 o'clock in the morning, he'll look at your boat. I was like, bro, done. Thank you so much. I go sleep in the back of my truck, drive to the morning, go get the boat repaired. The guy aluminum welds my starter back onto my engine block, right? He goes, just buy him lunch. I'm like, what? Like, what? I don't know what you got. He's like, just buy him lunch. I'm like, okay. Like, what do you want? He's like, I don't know. The truck's right over there. Just give me like a plate lunch. So I buy him a plate lunch. He's like, yeah. And then 20% of whatever you win. Like, as like a joke, because I'm like,
Got him.
so I'm like, hey, dude, thank you so much. He's like, yeah, man, go give him hell. Like, I know what it's like, to have to have this kind of stuff happen. I end up getting 4th place, right? I end up making a check. I bought a case of beer and I brought it back to him and I put it on his desk. And he's like, what the hell is this? And I was like, 20%.
20%.
No way. And I was like, yeah, I got 4th. And and he's like, wow, like, good job. Da-da-da. So it was like, I'll never forget that favor that he did for me and was able, and because honestly, without it, this is the same time that COVID hit.
Mm-hmm.
So we had now went from a season that's typically 5 qualifiers to now 3. So the last one, it was now they're going to take their best 2 out of 3. The last one was I was sitting in I still 3rd place for AOI or something like that, and now they were going to go up to Clear Lake to go fish the last one. But no matter what, if I fished it or not, I was going to make the state team. So I was unemployed at the time because now Hollywood shut down, the whole photo industry shut down. So I wasn't able to do photo gigs. I wasn't able to do anything to do with Los Angeles. I was on unemployment for the first time in my life. And so I was like, it doesn't make sense for me to drive 8.5 hours up to Clear Lake, rent a place just to get a plaque for AOI. It's not worth it. If all I wanted to do was just make it to regionals. So make it to regionals. And this is fun, interesting because we were talking about smallmouth earlier, right? And how different they are in different places. In Hawaii, there's smallmouth in the streams on Oahu. So you can go hiking through the rainforest and throw a tiny little grub in like a half a foot of water and catch like a 1.5 pound smallmouth that you would have never thought would have been living in a little pond.
Wow.
And so the regionals was on Havasu. And in practice, I found out that they were chewing the glide. And I basically went out with, okay, I know I'm going to throw a jerkbait because it's cold, it's pre-spawn, and then as soon as the sun comes up, I'm going to go gliding and just glue it in my hands the rest of the day. This is also another tournament where very few guys were weighing in full limits. There was probably out of the field of 87 anglers, there was less than, I think, 15 bags that were fully weighed, like 15 limits, I should say. Yeah. Day one, I came in with I think just shy 18 pounds and led the tournament. It was the first time that Bass had ever put an article of me up. And you can actually go on bassmaster.com and go and look back on in the articles, and I talk about my tournament and kind of this random kid from Hawaii that beat a bunch of local hammers at Lake Havasu. But the wind blew day 2, so they canceled it, and then so it was the next day. I ended up catching 3 fish for 9 pounds, which was still, again, more than most people have. I didn't have a limit, but I mean, and if you guys want to go back and actually watch all this stuff, you can go back on my YouTube because I've documented all of it, awesome. Except for the 8-pounder that I caught in Pine Flat. But the whole tournament on Havasu, I have it all documented. So I ended up blowing out California. I led led the team by, I think the margin was like 15 pounds or something like that. So I qualified for the nationals. So around that same time, I had one of my best friends that I grew up with in Hawaii commit suicide. I had Hollywood completely shut down, where I was literally one of those people that I had to have my brother send me a bag of rice from Washington because there was no food in the grocery stores because everyone was panic buying. I was also one of those guys that also didn't have toilet paper. It was kind of funny, but that was like a thing. It was that, and so all I wanted to do was just get away. I wanted to get closer to the things that mattered to me, because life now was in such this fragile state that, one, it could be taken from you at any time, but two, that some of the closest people in your life, you never know what they're really going through.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry.
It's fine, man.
You're good, man.
Yeah. It was literally my best friend growing up. So I make it to nationals. I bought a boat with the money that I had saved up from, the regional thing. Because I had a 4Runner, I was able to get some Toyota bucks. And so this guy that was, again, and I don't know what my what my deal is with this, but this guy named Roger, who was this extremely nice gentleman. He was sick, and he's like, hey, he'd taken incredible care of his boat. He had this Triton, and he's like, I don't want to give this to someone who's just going to like turn around and like basically not use this for what my dream was. And my dream was to go and chase like the tournament thing. So I'll give you a deal, but just promise me that you're going to like go after this with all your heart. And I bought the boat from Roger because I knew I needed to upgrade from my 1991 working gas tank, which I forgot to mention to you guys, and that old boat. Mm-hmm. I bought his Triton, and a week later he passes. And so now I have two boats. I'm starting to do my research for what the Ouachita River's like in Louisiana. And my friends are like telling me I would bring 3 extra props and 1 extra lower unit, because you're probably going to like end up leaving it on one of the Cypress Needles down there. And one of my tournament partners that I was doing outside of the Bass Nation, I was also fishing the ABA. Mm-hmm. I was fishing as many tournaments as I could. I was doing the BBTs, I was doing ABAs, but the Bass Nation was the vessel that brought me to the next level, right? But so my partner that I was fishing Casitas ABA with, this guy named Lance, was like, dude, I would not, like, look what you did out of your uncle's old boat. Like, look what you've been able to accomplish so far. Like, don't take your newer Triton to Louisiana. Like, go and do it in the old boat. And because in my head, I wanted to go and rig out the new Triton and like bring the Triton down.
Yeah. And
so I was like, you know what? You're right, dude. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And so head down the Ouachita River, and to my surprise, it reminded me a lot of Lake Wilson in Hawaii, where you had a lot of laydowns. The water's kind of stained. And my buddy Taylor Smith from up north, incredible angler. He beat me at Havasu. He was the guy that was able to come back and win it. So he won regionals, and he, I knew that like I wanted to beat him. Like that
he's the one.
Yeah, like he's the guy to beat. And so my other buddy Matt Green, who I was fishing with, like local tournaments at Castaic with, he's like, remember the stuff that you learned. Remember all the things that you've taken along this way, and apply it. And don't forget about, your gut feeling and about even though everyone else is doing certain things and like the doc talk of everything, just like really listen to what your intuition is saying. And day one, this guy named Kobe Carden, who's from Alabama, he ran to the Darbone Spillway and sacked 19 pounds on day one. And this is a fishery where 10 pounds is a solid bag.
Yeah.
So he had lapped most of the field day one. I think day one I came in with like 10 and a half or something like that. So my plan was just to stay on the main river. One, I couldn't go too far because I only had 14 gallons. So I had to be real. It's either I'm going north or I'm going south. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go north because I had better bites up there. And I'm just going to just run all this stuff. I was fishing like a spinnerbait and then also a balsa crank and flipping a jig a little bit. And so I had figured out, day one, I had almost had like by, I think it was 1 o'clock. I had 2 fish in the boat. It was about an hour. Weigh-in was at 3, right? So check-in was at 3. I was like, wow. All right. Well, I drove like 24 hours to get to Louisiana. I guess I'm not fishing like Saturday, I was like starting to like let these negative thoughts like get into my head. And I was just like, it's okay. Just like keep grinding. And at 1:30, I picked up a square bill and I just start ripping down this bank. And you can go back and watch the video. And it was actually one of my favorite videos that I've ever edited. But I go to hang up the back treble hook on my reel because I was like, I'm time to move or something like that. But I was like, I go to hang it up, and I just clear this one little this one tree, and I see this perfect lane, and I'm like, one more cast. I fire over there. I stick a 3-pounder, which is like a good one there. And I'm like, oh crap! I turn my buddy. I'm like, all right, we're about to bounce some stuff, dude. Like, hold on. He's like, all right. And so throw the vest on, boom, rip down. The first thing that I see like that would like kind of remotely set up like that, I pull over, forecast, boom, stick a 4. And I'm like, okay, I just need one more for a limit. Go down, like fish this one little stretch that I had seen when after blast off. I was like, that just some reason that like looks good. Go in there. I cull up 2 more times, and I managed to weigh in like 10 and a half pounds day one.
Wow.
Day 2, and another 10 something. I kind of forget the actual weight. Kobe Carden ran all the way back up there to Darbone, and it completely dried out on him. And so I watched him blast by me, and then a half an hour later, blast by me again. And I was like, oh, he doesn't got him. Like, he's spun right now.
Yeah.
And sure enough, he had like, I think it was like 6 pounds or something, or like 4 pounds. It was a small bag after weighing 19. And so now going into day 3, I was sitting in second place with like 1.5 pounds under the leader. And just stuck to the game plan. I wanted to try to catch retreads early because I knew that we were dumping a bunch of fish close by. I managed to catch a 3.5 on the first stretch that I wanted to fish. And then from there, I just started bouncing a bunch of stuff and then fished new water. And it was like one of those feelings where you feel like people are looking out for you that aren't with us anymore. I had that feeling that day, and managed to put my last fish in the boat at like, I think it was like 1:30 or something like that. And I encourage you guys to actually go and watch it.
I'm definitely gonna.
So I watch all your videos, and the common theme here I feel like with you is when tragedy creates opportunity, right? So like you have a lot of tragedy, and a lot of guys do, but like it's the things that has happened along the way that sticks in your mind that makes you appreciate what you have, and you're like, if that wouldn't have happened, this may not have happened. And so that's all we can ask for is right opportunities, and then what we decide to do with them is on us. But and then you hoisted the trophy, right?
Yep.
And that was it.
Never forget that day. And they asked me, John Stewart asked me on stage, he's like, hey man, like did you ever think about fishing the elites? It was such a pipe dream for me.
Yeah.
That was so crazy, like lottery style, like remote. Like 25,000 people fish the Bass Nation. 25,000. I'm not making
I did
that
not
number
know
up.
that.
That's how many people start off with, like fishing just like regional club, like from the state qualifiers. Like the Bass Nation in Alabama is so massive, and that's just in Alabama. So like the fact that I was able to get past and just so happened to make it, and it worked out. And for him to ask me that on stage, like, would you fish the elites? And I was like, dude, hell yeah, man. and it's funny because the other guy that made the top 3, we ended up fishing the Classic that year together. I beat Taylor. Taylor came in. Taylor rallied hard, like on the last day. He had a bag. Like he definitely had a bigger bag than me last day, but because I had like just the consistent 10.5 pounds like throughout the derb. That was, Jared Miller was the other guy. It was Taylor Smith and Jared Miller. Jared Miller, he's like, well, I'm glad that you won because I wouldn't go back and fish the elites. And I'm like, well, like way to rain him on my parade, bro. Like, good thing you didn't win because I won. So, and so he was actually the first person to tell me, like, I wouldn't, like, I did it, but I'd never do it again. And so that was interesting to me because at that time I was like, oh my gosh, like I had just accomplished this dream of mine that I never even thought was like remotely achievable. And so of course I was going to take it. I told my girlfriend, I was like, like, I'm going to fish the elite. She's like, well, you don't have to make any decisions right away. And I was like, no, babe. I made the decision. Like, I'm going,
You said, can I use your dad's truck though?
Yeah, it's a different girlfriend.
I know it's a different one.
Did that girlfriend's dad have a truck? Like,
no. We're still together. And
you guys are filming together and stuff too.
Yeah. So I bring her, I try to bring her along and feature her once in a while. She's super shy in front of the camera, but she's been a huge support for me. I think that, like first year she didn't, like, I think she came out to the Classic, but she didn't come out in the other ones. And I'm like, look, babe, like this is such a finite opportunity, and it is so difficult to do this alone. And I don't think a lot of people understand the amount of work that actually goes into it. It's not only the driving, it's something as simple as like making lunch or having dinner ready. Like things that we totally take for granted on any other basis. There's not enough time in the day when you're on the elite tour to like be able to take a second to relax. Like as soon as you roll into a derb, like it is grind as soon as you land. Like let's say day 1 of practices on Monday. As soon as you get on the water on Monday, those 3 days blast by so fast that they're a complete blur. And a lot of guys will attest to this. They will say that it goes by so quickly that you have a difficult time, like, okay, which was day 2? Where did I get that one fish? Because everything, it's like go.
Yeah. It's all a part of the tournament. It's like a giant tournament all the time, huh?
And so 3 days straight, and we can be on the water half an hour before sunrise and then half an hour after the sunset. So especially now, that's a 15-hour day.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you do that 3 days in a row and then straight into 2 days of tournament. I remember I would go fish the Delta and I would spend like 8 hours, 10 hours, for the most part. And I was done after 3 days, like completely, like I was smoked. My hands were bleeding, like sunburnt, dehydrated, everything. And now the fact that last year I did 5 tournaments without a break, every single one. maybe I didn't make day 5 or day 4 on them, so I was able to have one day off, but to go and drive.
It's not really an off day though.
No, it's not. You're driving to the next location.
The stamina it takes is.
I want to ask. So when you made the decision, and let's what was that conversation like when you called back home to Hawaii?
My parents actually, they were on a plane. So they didn't really call, like I didn't really talk to them until I think it was like hours later. But my brother was listening in on the radio as they were announcing the winners of it. I think he had like synced it up on Bassmaster.com to his radio, and I'll never forget. Like when I won, he recorded his dash. He has his dash cam, and he was recording, and I was like, dude, can you send me like your reaction? And he's just like, nah, man. Like, I'm like, dude, like you don't know how much, like you don't know how much it will mean to me. And it's like, it wasn't, you can't see his face, but you can hear it in his voice. And he was in tears, and like for me to call my brother and like to have this conversation with him, and he's like, he was so supportive because he knew that that I was struggling in Los Angeles. Like I was having like not a good time. Like it was super, super tough. And so I was looking for a way out. And he's like, dude, look what you've done. Like, look, like everything that you've been talking about, everything that you've been dreaming of, like you willed it to happen, man. You made it happen. Like take that step, dude. Like, I'm so happy. I'm so proud of you. So it was more so to talk to my girlfriend, and then to talk to my brother was the most like impactful moments that bring the most like memory to me. And then the rest is just like basically just floods of podcasts. I got on like a couple news stations in Hawaii. I try to highlight a lot of that in on that episode. But that was it. Everything around the Nationals, just it has there's a lot of emotion there for me, because it was such a pivot. It changed my life.
Yeah.
It absolutely changed my life. And whether, I stop tournament fishing, tomorrow, that moment I will have forever. Yeah. And no one can ever take that away from me. And it shows me, and it proves to me that anything is possible. That as long as you have the right head in it, and you have like faith in yourself, and whatever you believe in, that you can do it. And no matter how much the odds may be stacked against you, that there's still a chance. And so that's why it's like a really, really impactful time for me. But
I can feel the emotion, right? When it comes to people are like, oh, why are you so emotional? Well, it's because I care, and I think a lot of times as humans, like, we forget to bring humility to what we do, and actually do some reflection and think about the things that were all those milestones that we reached in our life, like leading up. A lot of times it just becomes a blur, man. The past becomes a blur, and you kind of forget. And it's a good thing to retain, those milestones in your life, because those are the things that make you grateful.
It's also big to hear.
Yeah.
Like, it's important for people to hear how much work actually goes into it, because you always hear when you're doing anything in the outdoor space where people want to be, and a lot of it's jealousy. They're like, oh, you're so lucky. Oh, there's way more than luck that goes into like where you get anywhere in life. Like, nobody's just handing you anything. Like, you spent all that time on the Delta when you decided to get back into fishing, and you knew you needed to learn Clearwater. Like you took your time to learn all that stuff, and every minute available you spent doing that. And and all of that culminated. And for you in a fairly short period of time, like you started bass fishing, you did bass fish as a kid, and then you kind of got away from it. And then all of a sudden that bug hits again. And you just I can't even imagine how much water you spent, how much time you spent on the water.
What year again did you get that first boat?
What was that?
What year again did you get that first boat? 2016,
yeah, 2016. So
in 4 years, you go from getting your first, boat to winning the nation,
and then taking that boat with an aluminum welded starter to Louisiana. With Louisiana, correct?
Yeah, Louisiana.
Knowing that your capacity was 14 gallons of gas, dude, like
same electronics.
But like you assumed a lot of risk, but had a lot of faith. You know what I mean? Like in yourself and understanding, like, hey, my intuition is going to play a role in this. Why change now? Why bring something new and shiny to the game when something maybe old and seasoned is going to get me to where I need to be because it's already gotten me there, right? Yeah. And so that's important and probably some of the best advice that your buddy ever gave you.
And your story's fresh. Like the technology was there, but it just proves like no matter how much technology in the world, instinct can still win. Like you don't 100%. Have to have. We hear it all the time. Like people ask us, and obviously on the media side of things, you get all the time. Like, what do you think about forward-facing sonar? What do you think about this? Oh, they should ban it. Blah blah blah. And it's like you don't need it to win. Like there's plenty of guys that go out there and win and make a living and don't have it, and they do well. It's refreshing to hear that and for people to know like that technology was there when he won this, and he did it without it. Like didn't need it. And like you said, I time stamped it because I think it's important. Trust your instincts, and that's what you did. Like you got a bite and you said, "Oh, I got this figured out," and all of a sudden you call up on day one and end up with a good bag, and we're able to follow it up over 3 days, and it got you to where you are today. So it's refreshing to hear that's still, people are still doing that because we hear so much about so much negativity about technology and everything like that. Just to hear that it can be done without it, like is important for people to hear that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think, and it is a touchy subject, I think, for a lot of people. But I think ultimately all I want to do is encourage people to just get out and go fish. Like,
sure. Whether
you're doing it from a kayak or from the bank or, a stand-up paddleboard or even a canoe, if you're going to go out and just spend time on the water, then that's it. And if your goal is to tournament fish, then great. Hustle, learn from as many people as you can. Jump on the boat with as many people as you possibly can. Because maybe if the guy that isn't good at skipping docks, you can't learn like how to skip a dock with that person. He might be able to teach you how to finesse a worm down a 50-foot, and you learn something completely different. Yeah, so absolutely. So I think that there's something to learn from everyone. And I think as a kid, I've always been a student of the sport, and I think I will forever be a student. And I think that that's something that we have to keep reminding ourselves, because that no matter what level you get, you're still able to learn. And
absolutely,
I think when you lose is when you feel like you know everything.
Dude, that was a perfect. That's a perfect quote, dude. Like, you're a student of the sport. That keeps you humble, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't know everything. And you've had a hell of a journey, dude. All the way from coming from, Hawaii, moving to Los Angeles where it's always sunny and 75. But wasn't easy in LA. And I can't imagine it being that way. And then you moved your way up relatively quickly, but it was a long journey, going all the way to nationals, and using Uncle Bob's boat, right? Uncle Bob's boat, correct?
Yep.
With an aluminum welded starter with 14 gallons of gas, like no electronics essentially, but, just using your natural instincts and the things that you learned, all the way up to really to bring you to where you are today. Sometimes grass isn't always greener on the other side. A lot of people say that, but and one of the things I wanted to do was ask you, you guys have a couple tournaments. Is it 2 or 3 tournaments left? Correct?
Yeah, we have 2 left. We have Champlain starting next week. Monday is first day of practice, and then back to back with the St. Lawrence River.
Are we already that?
Yeah.
We're already that far in August.
Yeah.
Dude, it's kind of like Matty said, like practice and then tournament starts. It's all like lumped up in one, you know, and COVID really affected. It's still affecting, right? There's still secondary effects of COVID. It really threw off a lot of people for a long period of time, and it still is. But you had trials and tribulations through the COVID era, and you lost a lot of critical people in your life, a lot of key important people in your life, and that's kind of like what I said earlier. You know, tragedy created opportunity for you, and man, you've had one hell of a journey, and we want to talk about the last 2 years of your Elite Series, but we want to do it at the end of your last event. You think that'd be possible?
Yeah,
we get you to come back on.
We get you to come back on.
Yeah. Because I know we're probably like making this a little bit of a lengthy one.
No. That's not why. But what we wanted to dive into that, but the conversation's been so great, as the journey has continued. So it kind of gives us an opportunity to talk about, 24, I guess you'd call it 24 solid months on the Bassmaster Elite Series.
Talk about your classic, like fishing that, all of that. I think would be good to,
because when I
don't want to try to cram it all into
for sure.
End of this, you know what I mean?
Because,
I think it'd be
honestly,
cool.
we could. You guys are so chill, man. I can see like talking to you guys for a few more hours. So
we could definitely do that.
I'd love to do that. I think I'll probably be back in Hawaii when we do it.
Okay,
that's cool.
So
that's awesome.
I might have to be in an Aloha shirt too.
I mean, if we push it out to November, I'll do a puddle jump over and do it live with them.
Dude, I got some really good friends that I'd like you to meet when you get back home too, if they're on the same island and stuff. But I do want to ask, right? We had a very, very serious journey conversation and stuff. Dude, who did you get to work with in LA?
Oh god.
You got any NDAs? It's okay. We understand.
Yeah, if you have a non-disclosure agreement, totally.
My NDAs have been like all done, so I'm gonna let it fly. Now
send it, Matty.
Send it, full send. I mean a lot, dude. Everyone from like, like the Rock, Kevin Hart, Bieber, David Spade. Reese Witherspoon, Anne Hathaway, and that's just like Cardi B, like Megan Thee Stallion before she it just and a lot. I've shot Ariana Grande basically naked. I've done a lot.
So did you go to school? You went to school for all that, right?
So I went to film school and then I dropped out of film school.
Okay.
And then I fell into the photo world, started assisting, worked my way up from a fourth assistant all the way to a first, became a lighting director, and then started shooting my own campaigns as a photographer, and then just only lighting for high-end commercial clients. So I lit 3 or 4 seasons of Lip Sync Battle.
I remember that show. Yeah.
I love that.
Remember like the intro with like Jimmy Fallon like doing a spin kick and all it's like all GIFs, like stop animation.
Yeah.
So we shot all that.
That's awesome. That's cool.
So what is if there was one thing you could think of, what is the funniest story you had from Hollywood?
Oh God.
While you think of that, I got a follow-up question before we get too far, because you said you shot The Rock. You got to get him on the boat, man.
Yeah, he bass fishes, doesn't he?
Yeah,
he got that pond down there. He's fishing. Like, you might try to get The Rock on the boat.
Yeah, like I could probably hit up one of my old clients to see like if I can make that connection. I went to high school with his niece. But yeah, I don't know. It'd be funny. I don't know. It's the celebrity world is interesting.
Yeah, I have no doubt.
I used to be David Beckham, like David Beckham's family's surf coach.
Oh, okay.
So I did like celebrity surf coaching for a bit, and then I don't know. It's That would be fun though. I mean, it would be a good time. I think, yeah. Oh man, there's a lot.
Well, while you're thinking about it, and you don't have to say it now,
Yeah.
but you went from doing photography in LA with celebrities,
glitz and glam,
to now you're the one that's getting the pictures taken. You're the one that's standing on the stage. Does it feel the same? Do you think that your position feels the same as their celebrity world?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because I moved to LA because I was in the entertainment industry. You know, like I was on national television. I used to be the voice of Pizza Hut and Taco Bell in Hawaii. You know, I used to do theater as a kid. I played saxophone in front of thousands of people. Like I'm not. It's not like I'm not used to being in front of the camera, in front of people. But when I went to Hollywood, I learned to I had to humble myself. One, I had to be completely crushed, right? Because that was a huge learning experience, because when I was in Hawaii, I was this big fish in a small pond. Like I thought that, you know, you just like, as like a young 20 something year old, you just think, one, you're invincible, two, that you're the shit. And like everything else is like, it's just, and so I needed to move to LA to get completely crushed. And it's either you get crushed and then you run back home with your tail between your legs, or you get crushed and you regrow into this new being, which is just more humble, and you've now learned. And so I have learned now that, like, what are the things about celebrities and things that I enjoyed when working with few of them, and then the other certain celebrities that I worked with that I was like, you're a huge steaming pile of crap that I wish that didn't exist.
Yeah.
And I would work by the 3-strike rule. And if a celebrity was trashed to me 3 times, that was 3 different days that they had a perfectly fine opportunity, but to be able to show me that they weren't a trash human at the core.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of times people don't realize that when they meet someone, they're like, man, I met David Spade. He was like a complete jerk. And like, he didn't give me a time of day, wham, you know? Or it's like, I met like so-and-so, you know, I met this angler, or I met this guy on tour and he was like a complete yank because of that. And it's like, okay, you don't know what that person went through out that day. Yeah. You have no clue what that person's going through in their life until they're a jerk to you 3 different times on 3 different occasions, and then they're probably a jerk.
Yeah,
you know?
It becomes a pattern.
If that person's just like just an unapproachable, like not friendly person to talk to, and trust me, there's a lot of guys on tour like this, and and that's just the truth. And I'm gonna be completely honest. And there's guys that look at me and like nose up me all the time. And then there's a term in Hawaii called hai maka maka. It means your eyes go high, and it's like because your crap don't sting. And it's like, for me, I don't care. I am not in a place where I need to go and try to placate or like, you know, like make like, I'm in a place where I know who I am. If there's good people out there, I know I gravitate towards good people, and all the good people on tour, guess what? I'm friends with them. Everyone else, I don't care about. I've had to learn that, and it's something that is very tough. I'm also the person that I wave at everyone. If you drive by my boat, I'm gonna wave at you. I'm gonna throw a shock, or I'm gonna wave, and that's just who I am. And I can't like it. And I was talking to Kenta about this last week, and he's like, "You are the only one that waves." He goes, "No one else." Like, and literally, there's very few people that actually wave at you, and it's so sad how cutthroat the elites are, to the point where they've lost their like a general like human interaction of being able to like, hey, we're living a sweet life. What's up, Rob? Like, how's your day? Like, hey, dude. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I could not be catching anything. One of the guys rips by me, I'm always gonna wave, and still to this day. And so I think that I've learned a lot from Hollywood. I learned a lot from celebrities. I learned a lot on the person that I want to be and who I want to be to others. And I learned a lot about who I don't want to be and I don't want to be perceived. So
I think that's a great message to the, to our youth that are watching these YouTube videos, are watching these lives, are, scrolling through social media. You don't have to emulate someone else to be successful. And I think that is one of the biggest concerns that I have. And this is I don't want to go off in this tangent, but the bottom line is you have surrounded yourself from your story, from starting all the way to where you're at, with really good people. Of course there's jerks along the way. But those are the people that matter. That's being a good steward of the profession, because at the end of the day, you are in the entertainment industry. Yeah, you're a fierce competitor, but you are also someone's role model, whether you know it or not. You are a figurehead at the national level of top competitive bass fishing. And so to be a good steward of the profession, you should conduct yourself in a way that is human and shows sympathy and empathy and all that stuff. So, it's everyone's different though. We're all cut from that different cloth. You know what I mean?
I think what's great, Matty, and getting to talk to you and know you a little bit here over the last couple hours, like I've been around the outdoor industry and around enough folks from Bill Jordan and all those big guys on the hunting side of things to guys on the fishing side, KVD and Jimmy Houston, and getting to see all those legends and people. And there is a very, very, there's people that put that facade on when they're on the stage, and they're talking to the people. And then they go to the show, and everybody that walks up to them, it's like it's a chore to have to say hi or shake a hand or sign a little kid's hat. Just talking to you, like you're definitely you're not one of those guys. Like you're going to be who you are. You're going to be how you were raised. And I don't think there's enough of that in professional fishing as a whole, or fishing as a whole at any level.
Facts.
People just aren't courteous. They aren't kind. They're mean to each other on the water. Their
social media is
the worst thing in the world. Like, I hate it. I wish it wasn't around. And I think that has some impact when you talk about how anglers are to one another. Like, I think there's some impact from the way social media is, because it's almost like you post an informational video or something, and immediately you feel like you're on the defensive because somebody's coming in telling you what an idiot you are. You're tying the wrong knot, or why are you using that line? Why did you have the camera at that angle? Like, so it's like social media has groomed people to almost put other people off, because it's like they're expecting some type of negative interaction. It's just easier to not interact. And that's not, when you actually open up and talk to people, like that's not really how it is.
The last thing I'll say on this is, I don't care what you could be 104th. It doesn't mean that the first place person is the one I want to drink a beer with. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that. So that cool. Carries no weight, man.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, guys. I think for me, like I said earlier, and I think I even said in our pre-call, was like, I grew up in a place where respect is something that it's everything, right?
Yeah.
And I have everyone's respect until you lose it, and it doesn't matter, if you're a guy that's approaching me at a gas station that isn't wearing slippers but is just stoked to see the boat. Like, I'm still gonna give that guy like a little bit of my time, as much as the 7-year-old kid that comes up to me, boy or girl, with a hat and a Sharpie with like a nervous smile on their face, wanting to talk to me. Like, I think those are the things. The you never know what that 30 seconds of time or what the 2 minutes of time can do to someone, and how that can help shape them. And I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, like, whether or not I'm tournament fishing was like definitely a dream of mine to accomplish, but something that I've always wanted to do my entire life, ever since I was a little kid, was have my own fishing show.
Yeah.
And it's a culmination of 1, being an entertainer, 2, being an outdoorsman, and 3, now having the experience behind my back. I think I can be able to fulfill that dream, hopefully, and to be able to encourage people to just to be outside, spend time with their loved ones, and then also be able to enjoy the outdoors and learn something, right? And to learn something from everyone, because there's something that we can learn from the guy that's living in a shack down in like the bayou in Louisiana to someone who's like fishing for perch in Italy. You know, there's something to learn from someone, and there's, no matter what, there's a thread that runs through all of our veins that's consistent, is we all love the sport, and we are obsessed with it.
Hearing that about the show, like that was always a dream of mine as a kid. Like growing up my whole life watching Bill Dance and Hank Parker and all those guys, like that's what I wanted to do. I didn't care about fishing a tournament. I didn't care, but like I wanted to have a show because they brought it to my living room. Like I sat there with my dad and ate cereal on Saturday morning if we weren't fishing or out doing something, like, and watch these guys fish. And it's crazy because I'm not super close with my aunts. If y'all watch this, I'm sorry, I'm not close with you. Just family stuff, you know how that is. But
still love you, but
family stuff, you know. But my grandfather passed away like 2 years ago. We're actually right before we started recording the show. So he died like in September, and then I think we started recording in December and put out our first episode in January. And one of my aunts who I'm not close with, like just randomly out of nowhere, called me crying, and she's like, "You finally." Like you always talked about, I remember you were 4 years old running around talking about how you're going to have your fishing show. And now you're on my YouTube on TV and you're talking about fishing. And it's kind of like, we're not doing ultimately what I wanted to do, but in a way, like I never thought about that. Like it is something that I always want to do. Now we have an opportunity and we're trying to build that platform where like, we just want people to get out fishing, man. Like bank, kayak. If you're fishing, if you're fly fishing for, what'd you call them? Dumpster dolphins in the LA River. Or, you know, you have $150,000 bass boat and you're screaming down the lake. Like we want everybody to be able to go out and enjoy it and to learn and to be open and share information, because like you said, everybody's constantly learning. Yeah. We're not all born with the knowledge of knowing everything. Even when you get to the highest level, you still don't know everything. Like, it's just, it's refreshing to talk to somebody who's like one of us, I guess, is what I'm.
Facts, dude. Like you define, like the person you are goes with the saying that we talked about, and Pete said it. Like we're trying to create a culture of anglers helping anglers one cast at a time, and that's really what it's all about, you know. And there's no room in our. What's that?
Sorry, dude. That's crazy that you said that. Just because, so some of my closest friends that I grew up with in Hawaii, were. The slogan that we have, or our tagline is, friends pushing each other to level up one frame at a time.
There you go.
Yeah. Because we were filmmakers, right?
Yeah.
And so, and we all keep each other accountable. And so the fact that you said the one cast at a time thing, like it all tied in, and it's serendipitous in a way, because it's so true, man. Like I think it's, we can all learn something from each other, and we can all be inspired by each other. And especially if someone's not in the best place mentally too, or in a place in their life, that we can also assist them in however way that we can, because life's too short to do something you don't want to be doing. Right. Yeah. And
that's absolutely.
I think it's funny when I hear people saying like, man, you live in the dream, man. And I'm like, you can be living the dream too. Like, it doesn't, just because this is seemingly the dream, like, why aren't you doing something that you're truly passionate in? You know, is it because of the social conformities of like, okay, I have to have this because I want people to look at me this way, or I need to have this because of X, Y, and Z. It's like, no, man, like what truly makes you happy? Like, I was talking to Taku about this. I'm like, Taku, what are you going to do after bass fishing? And he's like, I want to be a killer bee exterminator.
What?
Yeah.
Oh.
True story.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, they got a lot. He's talking about back in Japan, right?
Yeah, a bunch of killer bees in Japan. Like,
dude,
that's
they got some giant ones over there.
Yeah, they get those big murder hornets.
Yeah. There's like the actual murder hornet is in Japan, but it's like something like, I'm like, you know what? And who am I to say that that's something that's silly? I'm like,
No,
Taco,
dude.
you go out there and slay as many killer bees as you can, my guy.
It's actually a pretty badass gig if you think about it.
Yeah, and so
You're like
because
a
you're
professional murderer.
I hope they have a flamethrower.
yeah.
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 Can you imagine Taku with a flamethrower just out there smoking killer bees? Now I want to record that.
Taco's the guy that will be out like casting at hornets' nests when we're out in the Like-
I hope he has like 15 EpiPens.
Yeah.
like whenever I see a hornet, like a bee's nest or like a hive or something, I always like film it, and I'm like, "Hey, Taku," and I said, but no, but like in all seriousness, man, like it doesn't matter what you like, what would make you happy. At the end of the day, it's yourself, and it's not about making other, but and other times like maybe it is your purpose or what you want to do is make other people happy or encourage other people to do certain things. Then there's also nothing wrong with that too, right? So
I think it's cool. Like your dreams, you talk about chase them, and like your dreams can change. Like you dreamed about being a filmmaker, then you got the bass bug, and you chased that pipe dream. Like, no, I want to do this, and you went and did it. And now it's like, if this doesn't work out, my dream still remains of doing this TV show. And I've watched your newer stuff on YouTube. I need to go back and watch the Nation stuff because that sounds awesome. But you put together a high quality film, and it looks good. It's shot good. It's you obviously know what you're doing. So looking forward to if it goes that way, like tuning in with my kids someday and watching Matty Wong and be like, I talked to that dude on a podcast once.
We actually virtually drank a beer together.
Yeah. No, I mean, obviously I want to have a beer with you guys in person. I would love to do this again. I definitely really enjoyed talking with you guys. What I do right now, I feel is my bare minimum on my YouTube. I obviously wish I was able to shoot with a 4K camera. I wish I was able to hire an operator. I wish I was able to hire an editor to do this, but I'm literally shooting it all on my iPhone, shooting it with GoPros, and I'm editing it all myself. And so sorry, go.
Oh, I was just going to say the time commitment to go that on top of all your fishing and preparation. I mean, I've done a few YouTube videos, and I'm no film school dropout. Like I have like no expertise of that. And so like, it obviously takes me a long time, but I know folks who do editing for different project stuff and they're way faster, but like it's time consuming. Like, and you're adding that. I mean, you almost have to in today's day and age, but you're adding that all by yourself up on top, on top of all your fishing pressure, which is, we appreciate you doing it because then we get to watch the content.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, I try to bring people. I mean, if you guys haven't, I guess I can start diving into plugging the socials. And whatnot.
Dude.
Yeah, let's do it, man.
Let's do it.
If you guys haven't checked it out yet, I mean, it is something that for me, it's kind of an ongoing video diary, if you will. I try to be as real as I am in the moments where if I'm not feeling it, then I'm not feeling it, and to the highest of the highs. And I try to bring the viewer along with that, and try also to be pretty transparent on what I'm doing for the most part. I mean, there's certain things that I won't spell out, but there's a lot of stuff that I feel like a lot of people can learn and use as a learning tool. And if not, at least just be entertained by a story that I try to tell with it. So on YouTube, it's Matty Wong Fishing. And it's basically the same for all the way across, the Facebook page, Matty Wong Fishing, TikTok, which I lag on, but trying to get better at it. That's same Matty Wong Fishing. And then on Instagram, it's Matty_Wong. And then I also run, which was my business before. I was doing a content creation for basically elevated imagery of bass and of lures. And that's called Capture Fish. And so that was actually how my relationship with Megabass started back in 2018. So it's kind of interesting on how people come in your life and you meet certain people and everything kind of is meant to be where it needs to be. And everything works together in this kind of like weird serendipitous way, I feel personally. yeah, it's all kind of led me to where I am now. And I'm super humbled, super grateful for it. And basically got to catch the snot out of them these last two events to stay on tour because I think it's all like the top 70 advance, but then you also have like the legends exemptions, which take away a lot, and then the guys that have been on tour for 5 years or more, they can drop their worst year. So if it's in the cards, I'll requalify, and if it's not, then I get to put my energy towards another dream of mine. And all I can say is I just encourage people to go out there and do what makes you happy.
Absolutely,
dude. We appreciate those words of wisdom, especially to us first of all, because we all have dreams as well. And to all of our viewers, and I know they're going to appreciate that. And then, listen, this is just part one. We will not leave this unattended because we want to talk to you after the last event up north. So we really appreciate your time. Please hang out real quick. We're going to put you on standby.
For sure.
And we'll have a conversation after that. So
real quick before I do that, do you want to plug sponsors? Because I know you can't do it on your own, self-funded. I want to make sure you get a chance to shout all of them out.
No, thank you, man. No, I really appreciate that. I mean, for one of the first texts that I got after I won nationals was from Mega Bass, and I literally got a text saying, "When the dust settles, we're in your corner." So I really, really appreciate Mega Bass and the support that they've given me, and just the ability to be able to fish some of the most finest products that are available on the market. And I say that with 100% full confidence. From their rods down to their baits. I mean, everyone knows their jerk bait, but like being able to fish all their rods the past 2 years, I feel certain things now that I wasn't able to pick up on before. And so huge shout out to Mega Bass. Other companies that I'll go down. We got American Bait Works is another incredible sponsor of mine, and they're the guys that do bait fuel and freedom jigs. So a huge shout out to American Bait Works. Yeti, they've been a huge support to me as well, and their product speaks for themselves. Olukai, which is an incredible footwear brand. The slippers. I call them slippers. Everyone calls them flip flops, but that's what I grew up with. In Hawaii, we call them slippers. It's your slippers. So they make the best slippers in the world. So huge shout out to Olukai. Sims, honestly, I think they're the best in the industry. Their performance outerwear is second to none. So huge shout out to Sims for their support. Gamakatsu and Sunline, just again, like I've been a fan of their brand for a really long time, and so I was actually Sunline's first rep in Hawaii when I was 19.
That's awesome.
So it's kind of funny on how it all kind of came full circle there. The hookup tackle, Ben and the crew out in Arizona, those guys are incredible. Probably the biggest selection of JDM and Japanese baits that you can buy. Also, they have the largest selection of Mega Bass stuff out of any distributor in the States. Powerhouse Lithium, the crew, RJ and Bob over there, they're a small team, but they make an incredible product. And I think what they're able to do with being the first to be able to offer a lifetime warranty on a lithium battery is pretty awesome. And I also got a bunch of codes that you guys can go and check out on the YouTube that will give you kind of like perks for a bunch of these things as well. Electric sunglasses is another one. My eyes don't fatigue. I always wear them. They're super light and they're incredibly great when it comes to sun protection on the side of your eyes. So a huge shout out to Electric. And then Lateral Vision, the clothing line that basically helped fund this thing. They're the ones who supported me just as much as Mega Bass, and being a very, very, very small company out of Southern California, the fact that they were able to support me for the past year and a half, almost 2 years, is incredible. And so if you guys want to support me directly, if you go on, they're still hosting my capsule. So basically all of the profits go to supporting me on the road. So if you go to lateralvisionbrand.com and then you just type in Matty Wong, you'll see a whole collection of clothing that I helped design with them. And it literally directly affects me and helps put gas in my truck and boat and food on my table. So that means a lot. And then, basically, I mean, Vertra and the Kind, and then Bastrix is another great brand out of Ventura. Brian, the owner over there at Bastrix, has worked with me to make my own custom colors. So huge shout out to Brian. He's the man. And the Kind and Vertra being a local surf brand originally, now based out of California. It's just kind of an interesting synergy on being able to partner with brands that I've been a fan of ever since I was a little kid. And so it's kind of like, it gives me in Hawaii again, I just realized that this isn't like just a Hawaii thing, but it's like we call it chicken skin, but I guess it was like goose. What is it?
Goosebumps or chill bumps. Yeah.
Yeah, goosebumps. So in Hawaii we call it chicken skin. But
That's fair.
But yeah, it gives me chicken skin to think about it because I used to watch this guy as a kid, and I met him when I think I was 5 years old. His name was Mike Sakamoto, and he had a local fishing show called Let's Go Fishing Tales with Mike Sakamoto. And I remember he took his time out to talk to me, and he signed literally one of those fans that cool you off.
Yeah.
And a Polaroid photo of me and him, and he signed it, and I still have that fan somewhere because I would watch Mike Sakamoto with my dad every single weekend, along with like Bill Dance and stuff like that. And so to see him with his jersey with all these sponsored brands on, I was like, man, one day that would be the ultimate, to be able to partner with these brands that I've like always been like the hugest fan of. And so I feel like I've arrived at this place where I am like incredibly humbled and incredibly grateful that I get to help represent these brands. So if it wasn't for all these guys to helping me, I literally wouldn't be possible because it costs about $100,000 to do the tour. So yeah. And then obviously, and last but not very least is all the people that support me, and that's my fans, and that's my family, and that's my friends, and I like to think that most of my fans know that if you guys ever have any questions or are interested in anything, feel free to reach out to me, whether it's a DM on Instagram or on a message on Facebook. I always try to answer. And if it slips by, I always try to make sure to due diligence to go back and answer everyone, because I feel like everyone deserves a moment of time, and I never know what that little moment can help with someone. So,
dude, Matty Wong, for those who are listening, that's absolutely true. We sent him a DM on Instagram from a private account, not a business account, and he answered, and that's why he's on the show. Please hang out afterwards, man. You've definitely given the OneCast some chicken skin.
Yeah.
We appreciate that brutal honesty and your journey along the way. And like we said, man, a lot of opportunities created, and it wasn't from any lack of trying, because you're definitely where we want to see you right now, and hopefully that you have a bright future. And we're going to revisit this. This is part one. And we appreciate everyone listening to this episode. Ben, Pete, got anything?
I'm actually not going to put him on standby. So, Ben, if you have anything, and then I'll close her out.
I learned a couple new things: chicken skin, and I've got my slippers.
We got our slippers and our chicken skin.
And your shirt isn't a Hawaiian shirt. In Hawaii, we call them aloha shirts.
Aloha shirt.
I promise when you come back for part two, I'll have an aloha shirt. I'll feel left out. I'll feel left out. But no, Matty, we appreciate you coming on. Everybody listening, everything he just talked about as far as his socials, I'll have a link down below in the description. Make sure you go like, comment, subscribe, follow along with Matty. Like you said, ask him any questions you might have. I'll also post a link. I'll directly go in and search his clothing line, and I'll put that right in there. So if you want to buy a shirt, hat, I don't know what all he's helped design, but I'm going to go buy some tonight before I go to bed, because I've always been a Matty Wong fan since you made it. But now that I know you and the type of person you are, like, you just elevated yourself even higher on that respect scale. So appreciate you coming on. Appreciate everybody listening, as always. Like, comment, review on the podcast. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, and help us continue to grow a community of anglers, helping anglers one cast at a time.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Oh, God, it's a toad, son. It's a toad, dude.
Yeah. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day.